Hello learners, welcome to our session today. I am your instructor, CPA Ringo Frederick. In our session today, it is a continuation of what we were doing earlier on. Recall in our previous class, my good students, we had introduced the concept of decision making and uncertainty, and so far we've looked at the two methods. That is a maxi-max decision rule and maxi-min decision rule. In our class today, I want us to talk about the third method, which is Minimax decision rule, also known as what? Regret decision rule. And to do that, before even we proceed to the question that I want us to use in this concept, it will be very important for us to always master the steps that we should always be using in solving any problem using Minimax decision rule. And the moment you know the steps, the moment you're able to understand the concept behind that rule, you will find that this concept is always very, very simple. So to do this, let us introduce first of all what is this Minimax regret table. So in simple terms at this point, because as at the end of the day, the concept is we want to advise investors on the best decision alternatives that they should adopt. That is the main purpose of us understanding the whole concept of decision rules. It is us as management accountants to advise the investors on the best decision alternatives that they should adopt. So to do this case, understanding Minimax decision rule, we can note something briefly and say that this method assumes that the decision maker will experience regret. This method assumes that the decision maker will experience regret after he has made the decision and the events have occurred. After he has made the decision and the events have occurred, the decision maker selects the alternative which minimizes the maximum possible regret. That is what we are saying. That first of all, in this method, the investor will experience regret. And in this context, we are looking at regret as loss. In this context, we are looking at regret as loss. So the investor will experience loss after he has made the decision and the events have occurred. So it will be the decision of the investor to first of all identify the maximum losses that can be made. Then from there, he will select the decision alternative with the least loss, the decision alternative with the minimum loss. So basically, that's the concept of what? Minimax decision rule. Now, the next point is very interesting because I want us to understand the steps in solving Minimax decision rule problems. And the moment you master these steps, you'll find that it will be very easy for us even as we proceed, because each and every question that you'll be doing for Minimax decision rule, it will always entail the steps that I want us to look at now. So always, the first step that you must always take is just like the normal decision rules method that we'll be looking at. So number one step that you must always tend to know is to prepare payoff table. Prepare the payoff table. Prepare the payoff table. Prepare the payoff table. That should be our step number one. That should be our step number one. Prepare the payoff table. That should be our step number one. Step number two, my good students, that again you must always tend to have at the back of your mind in step number two. So step number two, from the payoff table, identify the maximum payoff under each state of nature. Under each state of nature. Kindly mark that very correctly. If possible, underline that word. identify the maximum payoff under each state of nature. Under each state of nature. That is very important for us to note. That is very, very important for us to note. We need to identify the maximum payoff under each state of nature. Step number 3. Deduct all the other payoffs. Deduct all the other payoffs. Deduct all the other payoffs from the maximum identified in step 2. In step number 2. In step number 2. In step number 2. Deduct all the other payoffs from the maximum identified, from the maximums identified in step number 2. That should take us to step number 4, my good students. Step number 4 is use the results. Use the results obtained in step 3 to prepare table of losses. To prepare table of losses, commonly known as what? Regret table. Commonly known as what? Regret table. Commonly known as what? Regret table. So we use the results obtained in step 3 to prepare table of losses, commonly known as what? Regret table. Commonly known as what? Regret table. Talk about step number 5, my good students. Talk about step number 5. Step number 5. From the regret table prepared, from the regret table prepared, from the regret table prepared, identify the maximum loss under each decision alternative. If possible, underline that, under each decision alternative. From the regret table prepared, identify the maximum loss under each decision alternative. Under each decision alternative. Then the last step that again you must have at the back of your mind is step number 6. From the maximum losses identified, from the maximum losses identified in step 5, select the decision alternative. Select the decision alternative with the minimum loss. 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 From the maximum losses identified in step 5, select the decision alternative with the minimum loss. With the minimum loss. With the minimum loss. So long as you have these steps in your fingertips, trust you me, there is no question that you can't handle when it comes to the aspect of Minimax decision rule, or also known as what? Regret decision rule. So the moment you have these steps, it will be very important for us to consider an illustration question which will cement this concept clearly, So that at any given point, whenever you'll be seeing a question for Minimax, you'll just be smiling. You'll just be smiling. You'll just be smiling. So to do that case, my good students, I'll want us to look at this question which was attested. I'll want us to consider this question which was attested in May 2021. Question which was attested in May 2021. Question which was attested in May 2021. Question number 2. Question number 2, May 2021. Question number 2. That's a question that I want us to consider for us to understand this knowledge very clearly. So this is our question. I'm going to share it on our screen. So kindly you can take a screenshot of the same. This is our question. This is our question here. Question number 2C, May 2021, question number 2C. And this is what we are told, that an investor intends to purchase shares in one of 3 companies, A, B, and C. The companies have varying degrees of sensitivity to the state of economy. There are 3 states of the economy classified as weak, moderate, or strong. The investor has constructed the following payoff table for the profits under the 3 states of the economy. The beauty part of it is that the examiner at this point, he has given us what? He has given us the payoff. So will not be required to prepare our payoff. Then on that case we are told that the probabilities for the 3 states of the economy are 0.2, 0.4, and 0.4 for weak, moderate, and strong respectively. Required. Advise the investor on the best course of action based on number 1, maximin criterion. We had looked at that. Number 2, maximax criterion. We had already looked at that. Our main area of concentration in our session today is minimax regret criterion. Also, you are asked to use expected value of perfect information. So in this case, my good students, what we need to do is to remember our steps. So kindly take a screenshot of that question. Still, I'm going to minimize this question so that we use it. So let me minimize first of all this question so that we use this data. So that is the question that we are asked to handle. We need to use Minimax. We need to use Minimax decision rule. So the good thing is that at this point already, we know very well that we need to prepare our payoff table first. And the beauty of the question is that we were already given this payoff. So what Mwalimu is going to do, we are just going to copy and paste the payoff that we are given here. The payoff that we are given here. So in this case, you are having this case. We are having the question and our payoff. So decision alternatives. We know very well that our decision alternatives at this point, I'll be talking of what? The company that we should invest in as an investor. So I'm having company A. We're having company B. And we do have, so I'm having company A here. Let me squeeze it somewhere here. We do have A. We do have B. And we do have C. And you are given our figures in millions. Profit were in millions. Profit were in millions. Then talk about our state of economy, or rather state of nature. State of nature in that case, this is what was given. State of nature. State of nature. What were we given? Our state of nature, my good students, here I'm given weak, moderate, and strong. So you do have weak. So we are having here weak, moderate, and you do have what? Strong. And you do have strong. And you do have strong. Probabilities, so we are not going to use them here, but let us just note our probability. Probabilities are the state of nature which is weak. I'm given 0.2. State of nature, which is moderate, I'm given 0.4 and 0.4 respectively. A, in terms of profits, A generated when the state of nature is weak, we're having, in this case I'm having -4. Moderate, we do have 3.5. And strong, we do have 6. B, we have loss of 2.5, and you do have 4.5. Then C, we do have -2.4. We have 2.8, and we have 3.5. So basically that is our payoff table. It is a payoff table that we've just copy-pasted it the way the examiner had given us. So this is our payoff table. Payoff table. That is our payoff table. So already we've extracted the data that will be very important to us. So allow me to hide the question like that. Now let us follow our steps. So the first step is to identify the maximum payoff under each state of nature. Maximum payoff under each state of nature. So I'm going to identify our maximum here. The maximum payoffs under each state of nature, if I was to look at week, between -4, -2, and -2.4, which one is the highest? So we can clearly see that the highest here, because they are negative, so 2 will be the highest. So the maximum here is 2. The maximum at moderate, I can clearly see, is 3.5. And the maximum at 0.4, or rather strong, I can clearly see is what? 6.0. So these are the maximum payoffs under each state of nature. Step number next, which is step number 3. Deduct all the other payoffs from the maximums identified in step 2. So we need to deduct all our other payoffs. Remember, this was negative. So therefore, we are going to take -2 minus that, -2 minus the figure that I'm having there, -2 minus the figure that you do have there, because that is our maximum. Come at moderate, we do have 3.5 minus that, 3.5 minus that, 3.5 minus that. At strong, we do have 6.0 minus that, 6.0 minus that, 6.0 minus that. So that is what you do have. Okay? The next step, we've said, use the results obtained in step number 3 to prepare table of losses. In this case, we're talking about what? Regret table. So let us prepare our table of losses. Table of losses. Commonly known as what? Regret table. Commonly known as regret table. Commonly known as regret table. So our table of losses, we should be having, of course, our investments areas. I'm having, that is A. We do have, of course, A. That is A. We do have B. And we do have C there. We do have A, B, and C at that point. Then the next thing that we need to do very well, you know very well that I should have our state of economy, which in this case we had weak. We had moderate. And we also had what? Strong. Probability 0.2, 0.4, and 0.4. Talk about A. In this case, we should be having what? I'll pick my calculator and we work it out. So we are talking of -2 minus -4. So minus 2 minus minus 4, that should give us 2. So I'm talking of 2 there. Minus 2 minus minus 2, that should give us, of course, 0. For C, we do have C. In this case, we should be talking of 2 negative 2 minus minus 2.4. That should give us 0.4. Okay? Then, at moderate, the same case will happen. This is 3.5 minus 3.5, 0. 3.5 minus 2.5, that should give us 1. Then 3.5 minus 2.8, 3.5 minus 2.8, that should give us 0.7. Consider the next. Strong. 6 minus 6, that should give us, of course, 0. 6 minus 4.5, that should give us a figure of, that is 1.5. And 6 minus 3.5, that should give us 2.5. So, we've prepared our table of losses or regret table, believing that we are all on the same page. Step number 5, from the regret table prepared, identify the maximum loss under each decision alternative. Decision alternatives, remember, you can either invest in A, B, or C. That is our decision alternatives. So we identify the maximum losses here. Identifying the maximum losses. Maximum losses that we can have under each decision alternative. So maximum losses, maximum loss at A, I can see maximum is 2. Maximum loss at B, I can see is 1.5. Maximum loss at C, I can see here is what? 2.5. So these are the maximum losses that we can identify under each decision alternative. The next step is what? The next step is for us, from the maximum losses identified, is step 5, select the decision alternative with the minimum loss. So between 2, 1.5 and 2.5, where do we have our minimum? Our minimum, we can clearly see I'm having 1.5. So this is what we are going to term it as what? The minimum of the maximum losses. Minimum of the maximum losses. Minimum of the maximum losses. So therefore, we can advise the investor to invest in shares of which firm? The investor should invest in shares of company B, because using Minimax, that is where we are getting the minimum of the maximum, or in shares of company B, in shares of company B. And basically, that is what you are required to do. And that's the reason why, remember, we are talking of Minimax decision rule. Minimum of the maximum losses. Minimum of the maximum losses. So basically, that is what we are required to handle in that question. And as we can all clearly see that, the moment you follow these steps, it will be very, very easy for us to handle this. It will be very, very easy for us to handle this. So to this point, I want you guys to join me in the next session, where we are going to handle the other remaining 2 methods under conditions of uncertainty. And this will be High-Wiz decision rule and Laplace decision rule. Thank you so much, and let us meet in the next session. Thank you.